it's almost midnight. Caitlin, we're gonna be late. Are you almost done in there?
No, I think I am almost done. Yeah, you should just go ahead without me.
Are you sure?
Things have gotten a little hairy in here.
Oh.
They've gotten a little furry in here too.
Yeah, I heard you scratching on the door, so I just thought I'd come up and check. I mean, I've got my coat on already. Everybody's going to be waiting for us. Luckily, it's a full moon tonight, so it's going to be super clear.
What's that you say? A full moon!
Yeah, perfect, because we're talking about a wolf movie today, right?
Oh, well then honestly, I might fit right in, actually, if it's a wolf movie. Is there any chance that this is taking place out in the woods?
Yeah, I mean, there's woods behind the drive-in.
Okay. No, this will be perfect then. I'll come on out, but could you get the handle? I'm a little incapacitated at the moment.
Yeah, I'm going to set up the crate, so just give me like another minute. Maybe you can introduce yourself. I'll put some treats in there. It'll be really comfortable.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I was waiting to hear about the treats. Okay. Well, while you're handling that, hello. Woo. I am Caitlin Cadieux, and I'm an animator, an illustrator, and a wolf right now. And
I'm Ira Marcks. I write and draw comics, and I wrangle wolves.
Just this one primarily, I think. Unless are you moonlighting?
Yeah, the work is dried up in the comics business lately, so, I'm just exploring possibilities. So this is our podcast about cartoons, where two lifelong artists, fans, wolf people talk about the mysterious, magical, and furry process of bringing good cartoon wolves to life, and the stories that go along with those wolves.
In today's episode, we are bringing to a close our Cartoon Saloon-a-thonza Ganza-rama Palooza with their latest film, 2020's Wolfwalkers. Come howl at the moon with us. Welcome to Cartoon Feelings.
Welcome to the Cartoon Saloon Ramapalooza 2004.
It is 2004. Aww. We were so young.
Oh, yeah, we were so young. 2004, what was I doing? I was really into the band The Rapture in 2004, maybe. That was a thing. Dance.
I've never
punk.
heard of them.
Yeah, of course not. You were in like middle school or something, right?
I was, like 8th grade or freshman year of high school, like miserable.
Just miserable?
Yeah.
That's always your answer when we talk about youth.
Yeah, it wasn't great for me. I don't know what to tell you.
No, that's good. Well, there's the deflated balloon of our conversation. It started strong.
Honestly, I don't really remember what I was doing. 2004? No, I wasn't in 8th grade. What the fuck? I was thinking that's like 2014. I don't know. I guess I was an actual baby.
Oh, okay. Well, now I'm depressed.
Wait a minute. Fuck. I can't keep track of any... Hold on. No, I'm wrong. I was right the first time, I think. I've come completely unmoored from the Gregorian calendar. I don't know. I don't even know what time it is now.
That's fair. Flat circle, whatever time is. Who knows? Well, today's theme is wolves. Agreed?
Yes. Thank you for asking if I consent to this. I do.
Okay. I didn't know if there's like a bigger theme in this film that I wasn't catching.
I was thinking more of walkers.
Yeah. That's true. Just
famous animated walkers is more my deal.
So I thought we'd start with a little game about wolves. Wolves are, they're fairly important to me. I don't know about you, but like fictional wolves from stories, something that's been a big part of my life through 2004 and on.
Yeah, even pre-2004, I would assume for both of us.
Yeah.
There, God's perfect creature. We did him a disservice turning him into a dog, and I love dogs.
Yeah, I mean, wolves are... people and wolves have a real conflicted relationship. And I guess we can talk more about that when we get into the movie, because the people of this movie and the wolves have a real tough time with each other.
Yeah, they're not hanging.
But I thought we'd play a little wolf game to open things. We haven't done any games. I like dumb games.
Yeah, I've been waiting. I'm like, when are we going to play a game? Talking is great, but...
Games are better. It's a thematic game. So listeners, don't think that we're just getting like too loose here and we're just going to like start doing a bunch of dumb shit. This is a relevant game. It's called the Wolf Pack. I'll put a sound effect here. So Caitlin, your job is to design your own custom wolf pack based on a list or what's the collective noun? What's another collective noun for wolves that aren't the pack? Like if you just have a room of wolves that are unrelated, what would you call that?
Like a house party.
Okay, so from this house party of wolves, you have to build yourself a pack. And these are all wolves from famous, I guess they're all from films. They've all been adapted into films in some way. And I've put them in our shared documents here so you can see them ahead of time. True?
Yes, can confirm. I have witnessed the pack, the draft.
Yes, and let's say you have to pick, let's say a pack of 6 based on all these wolves, and we'll go through the list, and then you're going to put your little pack together based on what you want, the dynamics you want at play in your little group of wolves here. So let's just go down the list, and so everybody knows what wolves are in your selection, and then you'll go through and decide and let us know why you've picked what you've picked.
That seems fair.
So right off the top, I picked a wolf we haven't talked about yet. That's probably important to both of us.
Okay, it's Maro from Princess Mononoke, which honestly is one of my favorite movies that human hands have crafted.
Yeah, me too.
I saw it at a young age and I was like, yes.
Yeah, I feel that's going to be an obvious one. And then we've got...
a really obvious one.
And then we've got Akela from The Jungle Book, the wolf leader.
You know, like the surrogate papa, sort of. I don't really remember him super well, but he seems like a nice guy.
Not a lot of character development for him. And then we've got one of my favorite wolves, Gamork, from The Neverending Story.
Love Gamork.
A complicated character.
Big fan of that guy.
So the next one, are you familiar with this wolf?
Oh, yeah. Like, it's been a long time. Like, I read this when I was a baby, essentially. I don't really remember anything about it.
So White Fang we're talking about, Jack London, classic wolf. Now, Dances with Wolves, I feel like I've mentioned this movie already because it's just always on my mind.
I don't think you have.
No?
But please.
Okay, well, I love Dances with Wolves. I've seen it a million times. It was like one of the few VHS tapes I had when I was very young.
I'll be honest, this is surprising for me to find out. I wasn't expecting that.
I mean, there was it was a very specific phase where I thought I was too old for like cartoons and stuff like that. So I'm like, I'm just going to watch grown-up movies, which I guess, I don't know, meant that they had like a passionate sex scene or something. Yes. Or had Kevin Costner in them, one of those two things.
Yeah, so that's a safe cutoff when you're a kid. It's like, what are adult movies? It's like, oh, Kevin Costner? Okay.
Yeah.
This one is for adults.
So in Dances with Wolves, there's a wolf called Two Socks that kind of follows him around and kind of guides him and watches over him. It's a good name.
That is nice.
And then, of course, we've just got some like fairy tale wolves. We've got the Little Red Riding Hood wolf. We've got the Little Pigs wolf. And we've got Peter and the Wolf. Great theme song for Peter and the Wolf.
No werewolves, though, I'm noticing.
No, except actually Gamork is kind of a werewolf. If you've read the book, there's he's technically a werewolf, I guess.
I didn't know that, but that makes him way cooler.
Well, I give you this list, but I also... encourage you to add to it if you want to throw a couple more in. This is just a selection I made real quick. off the top of my head, pretty much.
Trying to think of like classic wolves. The worst part of this shit is I know I'm going to come off this, oh, recording, well done, like great episode. And then I'll be like, damn, my favorite wolf, whoever. I want to say Teen Wolf too, but I actually haven't seen that movie. I just feel like he should be on here. It's a real werewolf thing.
I mean, he plays basketball. Michael J. Fox. Let's throw him on there.
I'm going to put into the wolf from Fantastic Mr. Fox. Who doesn't really do anything and is there for like about a second, but that I still respect. And I also would salute him thusly.
And there's also the Jack Nicholson is a wolf in the movie The Wolf, which I think is like a forgotten werewolf film with Benicio del Toro from, I don't even know when it came out.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, I think it is. I can't remember.
This reminds me of when I was a kid, I saw the movie Brotherhood of the Wolf, which was definitely an adult film. I don't remember that well. And I only remember that I waited the entire time for the wolves to show up and they really don't. And I was super disappointed.
Oh.
It's like the only childhood memory I have of that movie. I was like, this sucks. As an adult, there's probably something to it. I don't know. Haven't seen it again.
I was almost going to throw the dire wolves on from Game of Thrones, but that's like a collective of wolves, right? It's not like there's a single wolf that you could name. I
guess there is like Ghost, like Jon Snow's wolf. Honestly, that's a good one. I'm going to put it on the list. Balto. Isn't Balto like part wolf?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If they're part wolf, that counts. If you've got a little wolf, I mean, you're all wolf as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think Balto is half wolf, and he's kind of an iconic homie of humanity.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Putting Balto on here.
What about Marmaduke? Was Marmaduke part wolf?
I think in spirit, yes.
Okay.
I think in his heart, definitely he was.
All right, is this a good list? You think you could make a pack out of this?
Yes.
A 6-pack? Wolf 6-pack?
A 6-pack of wolves? So
that's the new name of the game, the Wolf 6-pack.
I have one clarifying question, and is that, so there's Morrow from Princess Mononoke. What about the 2 boys? Her 2 sons?
Oh, I thought about that, but I just thought I would keep it simple. I mean, she seemed like the obvious choice, but if you prefer a son...
She definitely is. I don't have a preference. I will be honest. Okay, I'm just going to say this now, and then I'm going to actually play the game. But my pack would be Morrow, the 2 other wolves, and then I would be Princess Mononoke, and that's it. And then the game is done, and I live in the woods now, and none of you fuckers will ever see me again. Bye. That's
more... I would call that just a fantasy that you hope to come true more than a game. Yeah. That just sounds like an alternative lifestyle you wish could just come upon you.
Yeah, it's like my spirit playing reality. That's what's really going on. Behind this human veil that we're all living in. It's awesome on the other side.
Okay, well, now that we know that about you, let's say in a lesser reality where these are the rules, you have to put together a 6-pack of wolves based on this list.
Okay, well, Morrow is for sure in. She's so cool. She's the best. Princess Mononoke is the best. I don't even know. There's nothing more to be said about it, really. When I saw Wolfwalkers and I was done with that movie, or it was over, I was fuck, these are my favorite movies, I guess. I like movies where you're a girl and you live in the woods and wolves are involved in a very significant way. That's a genre that I'm into, I guess. Yeah. I have confirmed it now. So that's pretty cool. And I'm definitely going to say Gmork has to be up there. This isn't surprising to anyone, I think. I'm not surprised at all that you are a Gmork fan. Mm-hmm. He never scared me. Sometimes I'll read about people, who saw that movie when they were kids and they were really freaked out by him. I just thought he was awesome. There's just something about it. He's so creepy. He has a cool voice. And, the puppet is cool. I was way more afraid of the creepy turtle thing in that movie. Ugh.
Oh, yeah. The turtle seems way more threatening. I almost felt bad for Gmork. I felt like he was under the sway of the Nothing, and maybe beforehand he was He probably had another life he was a lot more respectable before all this came upon him. Because he might be just like, he's in the servitude of the nothing.
Well, and you mentioned that he was a werewolf, which I didn't know. And that made me think that in the book, which I don't believe I ever read, that makes me think there's a little more backstory to him maybe, or other stuff. I don't know any of that. I only know what I saw in the movie. But when a character's in that situation where they're like, I'm just aiding and abetting evil, like something is probably wrong. Like they probably have encountered some kind of horrific way. It's a cycle of abuse. Like that doesn't necessarily make them, good or whatever. But like it's more complicated than that, I think.
Because to him, he is the savior of Fantasia. Like he's just been assigned to kill Atreus. So he is the hero in his own story, I think, is the way he kind of like explains it. So, you gotta give that you gotta be a little empathetic towards him just based on that, yeah. I think.
He's also just metal as hell. Like,
yeah, he has beautiful eyes.
Amazing eye design here by the puppeteers or, whoever.
Yeah. And he dies, which sucks. Animals shouldn't die. So anyway.
I don't know.
So you've got 2 in your 6-pack so far.
I'm definitely picking Balto also. Like, obviously I'm picking Balto.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's a hero in real life.
Yeah.
Obviously. Like, you're giving medicine to kids or whatever. Like, I don't actually really know the Balto story off the top of my head beyond what was in the movie, which I haven't seen for 10 million years. But he seems like a pretty cool dude.
Yeah, great sled dog. That's all I know about him.
Yeah, his wolf nature, I think, maybe gave him some resilience.
Yeah.
That he needed to get this medicine to the kids that needed it. And that's all. So definitely Balto's in. See, the other ones I don't know as well. I do think Aquila, I think I'm up to 3 now. And I'd probably pick Aquila because he obviously cares. I'm picking all of these for like tender reasons. Like Aquila.
That's good.
Was nice. And he like took care of, oh my God, boy. Mowgli. Jungle Book boy. Like, who is this boy? He took care of him. He didn't need to do that. He was looking out for his welfare, trying to do the right thing. That's nice. Aquila can come. He can stay. I don't remember the wolf from Peter and the Wolf. He's a bad guy, right?
Yeah, I think he sucks. I can't remember either.
More of a villain wolf. Well, I'm definitely...
He's a Russian wolf. I don't know if that changes your feelings about him at all.
I don't know. A comrade. I am going to pick the wolf from Fantastic Mr. Fox, too, just because he has a mysterious air about him. And I like his design. That's it. It's purely aesthetic, which makes sense for a Wes Anderson pick. I like choosing the Wes Anderson wolf purely for aesthetic reasons. Totally. Nothing else.
Skin deep.
And the last one can't be Teen Wolf. I'm not familiar enough. I might have to go with White Fang, even though I don't really remember. I read White Fang, I read Call of the Wild, but I was pretty young and I don't really remember them very well.
Well, I actually think White Fang kind of fits in the Kit Bull category. I think he was... oh
no, he's gonna make me cry.
He's like a rescued fighting dog, I believe. I just started
to start sobbing.
I might be wrong, but I think that's kind of the White Fang story a little bit. He was like a trained fighting dog. Yeah,
and I know he's like a Balto situation too, where he's part dog, I guess, but like also he's a wolf dog.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like the very little I remember from Jack London books, I feel like the dogs are good, but they do go through like really harrowing situations and it's like really dire and kind of bleak. I don't know how White Fang goes. I'm just assuming he's like very valiant and a great dog, probably, and he's awesome. So White Fang can also come. I think that's it. I think that's my 6.
All right. So that's your wolf pack. You've got Balto, Wolf from Fantastic Mr. Fox, White Fang, Gamork,
Aquila, and Morrow.
Yeah.
She would be in charge, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she's leading the...
Yeah, like, I wouldn't be in charge.
No, you're riding atop.
In my wildest dream.
Yeah. Okay, thus concludes the Wolf six-pack. Off you go, wolves. Today we're talking about Wolfwalkers, a movie from 2020 directed by Tomm Moore and Ross Stewart. Just a quick, tiny summary here. The year is 1650, and a young apprentice hunter named Robalin.
It's Robalin. You knew that Irish name, Robalin.
A young apprentice hunter named Robin Goodfellow comes to Ireland with her father, who is tasked with hunting a pack of mysterious wolves who are, quote unquote, terrorizing the residents of a small Irish town named Kilkenny, which is where Cartoon Saloon is based, which is a fun little thing. I like that, right?
Makes the research phase of production easier, probably.
Yeah, just step outside the office. Just like open your Venetian blind and...
You're like, yep, there's no more wolves out there. I was just going to say, I liked when Pixar did Inside Out because they were doing it in San Francisco. And it's kind of funny and cool to see studios do movies that are like, this is basically our hometown.
But it definitely suits Cartoon Saloon, as they're just like obsessed with these Irish stories. And I'll be curious to see where they take it next, because I wonder if they are actively calling this like a trilogy, a thematic trilogy. I came across that quote again. I had seen it before when we had done Secret of Kells, but now Tomm Moore is saying this. So I wonder if that means they're kind of done with this theme. We'll see.
Interesting.
Do you have anything to say about, I don't want to go into this if like it's not interesting, because about the Apple, like the fact that this is only available on Apple, or do we just kind of skip that sort of thing?
I personally am a little bummed that it's on Apple TV, just because, as I complained to you last week, like I can only watch it on my computer or like on my iPad because we don't have a box that has the ability to put Apple TV on our television. And I want to watch it on our TV. So looks great on my iPad though. No big deal.
Yeah, it is one of those little things that it just sucks when you don't have access to all this. I mean, there's so much content. It's hard to like complain about access to like one specific thing, but it is weird that it's so trapped within the Apple ecosystem that I don't even think you can just rent it on any other service at this point.
I do think some of that's pandemic weirdness, because their just stuff was like, you know, if they had to deal with Apple, that's their platform. And it's just unfortunate that Apple is like the most restrictive of them in that way. Because, you know, if it had been like straight to Netflix, I wouldn't really be thinking about it, because then I can just watch it on my TV. I can put it on my phone and cast it to my TV. Like, I don't need to worry about that. Mm-hmm. But right now, if I want to watch this on my TV, I need to buy like a $200 Apple TV. And I'm not going to do that, y'all. It's not going to happen.
It's a little lame. And I guess Apple has been around since the script writing phase of this, because I came across a little quote that said Apple acquired this project when it was still being scripted by the screenwriter Will Collins in the fall of 2018. So Apple money, you know, kind of built this movie to some degree, I guess.
Yeah, that is really interesting to me.
And it looks fucking great. I mean, like, they put that money to use.
Yeah, and boy, did they spend that money in a very satisfactory way.
Agreed. Yeah, so, like, let's talk about, you know, maybe talk a little bit. I've got a bit to say about the conception of this, like some of the jumping off points for this story, where it all comes from. Partly because it's some of my favorite era of art, and I know you like a lot of this stuff too, like kind of like, you know, medieval tapestry, like this kind of 16th century type of stuff. Like, actually, I remember when we were first hanging out, you had your tablet and it had your desktop on it was one of the unicorn tapestries.
Yeah, it still is on my iPad. Mm-hmm. And like my phone is like, I think it's John Collier's the artist. It's like Lady Godiva. Hold on, did I fuck that up? But John Collier's Lady Godiva painting is my like phone background. It's like an aesthetic that I like a lot. Horses with their arms, horse arms. When they got their arms up, when they got their arms down, they got people on them. Love that aesthetic. Very nice.
Yeah.
Can't get enough of those horse arms. I tell you what.
And there's just there's something Cartoon Saloon does that really, aside from visually captures that aesthetic, they don't animate as much in that Disney way, which I guess maybe to some degree makes their characters feel a little bit cold because I'm so used to Disney style, but it also bonds it so much more to this older style of art, the way things are a little more graphical, like something we keep saying about their work. Things are just a little quieter, like visually and audio wise in Cartoon Saloon movies. And that kind of, for some reason, connects me to a lot of this medieval art. I don't know why. Maybe because they're often like rural scenes that feel quieter. They just have like...
Yeah, I think when they spend so much time in nature or like even in the towns, it's just a little bit more about like cool things happening in like a mundane time or setting. So just there's not a lot of like explosions, like yelling. I guess sometimes there's yelling, but yeah, there's sedate, I guess, a lot of the time.
Yeah. And that's probably what it's like in Kilkenny where they are. I can't imagine there's a whole lot.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. I will go there at once as soon as we are allowed to travel.
Yeah, actually, that would be a fun trip. That's why we start the Patreon to get us to Kilkenny.
Okay, that would be really cool though. Cartoon Feelings road trip, flight trip.
Nope, too late road trip.
We could probably drive. Be fine.
Yeah, we get one of those boat cars.
We need a lot of Patreon money to make this happen.
So a couple interesting points in art history where this story is coming from. I don't know if you have the concept art book for Wolfwalkers. You're like the master. Oh, you do? Okay. So I haven't seen it.
I absolutely do.
But I heard, and I know this is true because I've seen the image outside of the book, but because it appears in the movie also pretty much, but there's a concept art piece by, I think her name is Alice Dunde. I'm just butchering that name. I don't even know why I tried. But anyway, she did a piece that's kind of a take on St. George and the dragon. But instead of the dragon, it is replaced with the wolf.
Oh, is that like the tapestry with like the guy on the horse? And like, is it the actual image that shows up in the movie?
Yeah, I mean, she might have redone the image, but this was like one of the, I think, earlier pieces of, it's called concept art. So I'm assuming that means it was drawn before the movie was put into production. But it also appears at a couple points in the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, that shit is extremely my jam. Like, that is the art that I want to be making. I think that's why, like, all of Cartoon Saloon has just, like, continually resonated with me more and more because, like, this is the aesthetic that I'm naturally drawn to. Mm-hmm. And this year, I'm, like, resolving to spend a lot more time on my own personal art. Just, I don't know. I have plans and stuff. I don't want to like say any of it on here because it doesn't matter and I don't want to jinx it. But like the stuff that I'm trying to work on, that I have this conception of like what I want to work on leading up to this big project someday that hopefully somebody will pay me money to do it. I don't know. It's a big thing. But it all honestly boils down to like that aesthetic. I mean, like creatures and animals who look scary but are almost always in the right. That's something that I'm very into. Yeah, and just like in Secret of Kells, it was like the stained glass aesthetic. It's always kind of the same where the commonality between all of their movies is this lack of perspective. And a lot of it comes down to this. So the aesthetic of Wolfwalkers isn't really evoking stained glass to me in the same way anymore, but like the way that they lay things out and the composition and everything is very similar. So yeah, in this case, it's more like the image that you're talking about is basically a literal tapestry that shows up in this movie. Mm-hmm. But it's just so resonant. Like, it just feels good to see that people are doing this and making this. Like, there's something about that just makes me so happy.
Yeah, totally. And particularly this St. George and the Dragon piece. So if you haven't seen the image, it's actually there's two different versions of it. But basically, it's St. George, who was actually like a Roman soldier. He's on horseback. He's got the big emblem of the flag. So he's got like the red cross and he's got a big spear and he's like stabbing it down at a dragon that's kind of more of a lizardish dragon that's coiled up on the ground. And I think this is, I guess this is a piece from the time of the movie. So mid 1600s. And it's a Raphael painting. And like the cool thing with Raphael, if you've looked into, listeners, if you've like looked into medieval art.
Never heard of him.
Well, particularly with him, I think he was regarded as someone who could draw figures and anatomy without reference so much. Like, and it almost feels like he's kind of a cartoon artist in that way, because he can like render figures in like really dynamic poses without having to use references.
That's why the dragon looks so realistic.
Yeah, and I think it adds like a bit of a dynamic energy to some of his work that maybe wouldn't exist if you were so dependent on like following a model. So that was something I was thinking about with this image. But the reason I love a lot of this stuff too, that I didn't realize like a lot in the first viewings of it, it's so imbued with backstory. So like the story with this image is it was commissioned by, let's see, I don't know exactly, but basically it becomes propaganda for like Christian movements, which is, a lot of what this movie is about, and colonization. So the story of the dragon is that a pagan king, his daughter, his princess, was accosted by this dragon, and they send in the knight to rescue her, and he drags the dragon back and the girl, and he kills the dragon in front of like the king, and he says, look, here's the evils that live in the land around your kingdom. Like, let the Christians protect you, because there's evil everywhere. But the evil is just whatever Christians say is evil. A dragon's evil, like a wolf is evil.
Whack, in my opinion.
It's just like the perfect piece of concept art for this movie. And I don't know if they came to the image later and fit it in with their story, or if the image inspired the movie. But it just kind of really summarizes a lot of the themes of this movie.
Yeah, it's a great image. And I'll save this thought for later, because it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. It just reminded me of the themes. But that will be a later thing, listeners.
Oh, mysterious. I don't know if you came across this story. It's called the Wolves of Ossory.
No, I didn't.
And so like Ossory is the region where Kilkenny is, but then it existed before, colonization, like in the old Irish kingdoms. And basically it's a story of these wolf/warrior figures who lived in the wilderness and like styled their hair in the fashion of wolves and wore their coats and would go wolfing, which was basically like raiding villages and terrorizing like the Christian colonists.
Sounds awesome.
So I think that's a lot of where this whole idea comes from. And I don't think their story is really like following any myth exactly, but it's just kind of, in the spirit of this time and place in history, which I thought that was kind of interesting. Obviously, these things were going to be there in a Cartoon Saloon movie.
Well, yeah, and it's funny because I feel like it is like this movie is like, hello, this is really what we've been wanting to talk about.
Yeah.
I honestly too. I mean, I won't give away the game here in the first half of the episode, but like I was surprised at how kind of positively the movie ended.
Totally. Agreed. Yeah.
I did not think that was going to happen. I mean, if you're familiar with Princess Mononoke, like if you're not, you should go watch that movie because it's real good. But the ending is really kind of heartbreaking. Like it's a little bit positive in that the main characters are alive. I don't know. But other than that, it's kind of bleak a little bit. It has a little bit of like hope and optimism, but in a very like questionable way where at the end of the movie, like all this environment and forest has been destroyed. And then there's this little moment of like, but the forest spirits are still here. And like the grass is growing, I guess. But like the literal god of nature has been fully eviscerated, like doesn't exist anymore. So good luck. I don't know. And that always just struck me as like a devastating loss has taken place here in this movie. And yeah, we'll talk about it more, I think, when we get to the end. But yeah, this movie has a little bit more of a happier ending. Just a little bit more of like things have sort of been tied up in a bow. It's not like perfect, but.
Right. And because even when we were talking about Song of the Sea, which you could kind of fit in the same sort of realm of like kids animation entertainment, when we started to describe the ending of that movie, it both got us really sad about like kind of the end of fairyland and like this kind of like coming of age. This one doesn't have that to me in any way. Like I think when we get to the end of this movie, it's kind of more of a relief. It's like a nice little just happy resolution in general for these characters. There's nothing to really dig into.
Yeah, it's quite positive.
So let's talk the look of this thing. I came across an old quote from one of the producers of Secret of Kells. So one of the producers on that movie really pushed Cartoon Saloon to like indulge their unique approach to the style and this sort of like, decorative art, graphical approach, simply because it was like so far from Disney. And like, if you know anything about like kind of French culture, they really are not too on board. They have their own Disney World, but they're not like super into it in the way like a lot of the rest of the world is. So it kind of makes sense actually that a French producer would be like, no, don't do the Disney thing. Don't be afraid to do the opposite. I just thought that like, of course it's a French guy. But I don't know, to me actually, I don't know how you feel about this, but like this movie actually feels very Disney to me and a bit of its influence, like a very 101 Dalmatians era, like xerography type of Disney.
See, that's very interesting to me because I saw them mention that specifically as like an influence, but like I don't see it. I don't see it in this movie. And I guess to me, it must be more of a spiritual thing. Well, and it kind of goes back to, I wish I could perfectly remember this quote off the top of my head, but it's a quote that I read from Tomm Moore, maybe in the Secret of Kells episode. I was researching something, and he said something about how CG looks bad, essentially, as it ages, and old Disney stuff doesn't, because it is relying on this language of basically artistry, like paintings, like the language of paintings and the language of illustration. And so it just has this inherent timelessness. Mm-hmm. And that to me is getting to that. A lot, like it's just obviously, that's why their stuff is so like painterly and relies so much on that stuff. And I mean, I do feel like it's working, but I guess also I can see it I have so much to say about the visuals of this movie. So I'm trying desperately to like keep it on one track because I just like fucking love it. It's so good. But the woodblock style that you see a lot in this movie, which is just fucking great. And like, I feel like that's almost a subject change because I'm not trying to, but I kind of see it there where 101 Dalmatians, like the backgrounds are really heavily line art focused. And then like the color is just like these big blotches of color. And I feel like there's more texture and detail actually in the backgrounds and in the art of this movie. But I can see those coming from the same sort of stylistic place and that I fucking love, like relief printing is just another thing that I have always loved. I haven't really done any of it in a long time, which bums me out hard. But like in high school, I did a lot of that and some in college, and I absolutely loved it. And it's just a great aesthetic. It's that reductive, taking away and then leaving behind, like that's the outlines. And just like when I realized that was such a heavy aesthetic influence on this movie, I was just like, yes, like it looks so good. And it's a perfect choice for like the time period. And it's just like, how are you so wonderful? Anyway, 101 Dalmatians, totally.
Yeah, I think it's really that the way the backgrounds feel quite distinct from the character designs, which is usually the case with animation. I think a lot of the time, like backgrounds often feel painterly and then like the character designs feel separate. But I think to me in 101 Dalmatians, they go out of their way to stylize the backgrounds to make it almost like musical. Like it almost fits the style of the soundtrack. Like it looks like album art from that era. And to me, this one's kind of playing with those things in that same way. So that's maybe. But also, I don't know, I guess just the black line art, like this is something that maybe I'm just more sentimental about now because these studios are really pushing the preciousness of hand drawn when they give it to us. Like Tom Moore was talking about how, you know, even during like the pandemic, they put up a giant billboard in New York for this movie. And he was just so proud to see like line art being promoted in such a way. And it's like, yeah,
well, it's not even that. Like the specific thing he's talking about is like they hand painted it onto a building, which honestly is really cool.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, that's even more indulgent of that. And even in like the Mary Poppins reboot, remake, sequel, or what the hell ever it is. I guess it's just a sequel, sort of. But you get that penguin scene, and it's just really trying to capture the feel of the way that line work in that Disney era is. And so maybe that's why it's more forefront in my mind. So now whenever I see just like heavy black line art, I'm just taken back to that era of Disney. Even if it's like kind of a superficial thing, it's just like kind of a process.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Like, it's just not something you see anymore, really produced to that quality.
I'd be curious to know what Disney was thinking at the time, because at the time, the Xerox process was to streamline and reduce the budget. It was like a means to an end. But now it's nostalgic and it's like a creative choice because we have all the tech in the world to make things look however we want. Yet still something like Spider-Verse will do halftone, or, you know, these things that evoke like the traditional arts. And I just think that's very fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to think about the process.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that because it made me think of another thing in this movie that is like very much part of its visual language and like a deliberate choice that they made. But that I also think about when I think about xerography and then even like my own art. Like, I think you're totally right that like when Disney was like, let's just scan the drawings right onto the cell sheets and like, let's just do that. It was for like to save money and all this stuff. But I've read people talking about like, we always were just trying to find ways to like capture the original spirit of the artist's lines. And like this, you know, when you clean it up, it loses some of that energy, which like, again, I think was like partially bullshit because of obviously we want to save money and like we're always just about to go out of business. But I do think there is some literal truth to that. And like, I always struggled with it. Like where I just do a sketch or whatever, and then you like ink it and you're like, wait, shit, like that, it sucks now. Like what happened? Like that's just something that everybody goes through, I think, when you're like going on your artistic journey or whatever, before you kind of figure out how to do that. And even then, I mean, you're changing it when you ink it. So fundamentally, it's just not going to look the same as it does on the page. Mm-hmm. But what I really love about both of these concepts, like the inking and then the xerography, is that this movie does both. Where, like, in contexts where the characters are in the city or, like, I don't know, it feels like a little bit loosey-goosey. So I will say it's not necessarily tied to location, but maybe more like concepts like the dad or the English guy, the Lord Protector. All of these characters, like, these settings are rendered in these really, like, slick, solid lines. And then when we're in the forest... or any of like the wolves or like Maeve and her family, like the wolf characters are all rendered in these much more sketchy lines to the point where frequently as we get like towards the end of the movie, there's just like full like construction circles drawings still like left in there. And I was like, it's brilliant. I was like, what a beautiful way. Like how ballsy, honestly, too, to just be like,
true, yeah.
I want to like show that, you know, the human situation is very rigid and very unyielding. And like the wolves are like free and full of like motion and life. And I'm like, and you just straight up leave the like, okay, well, the wolf's chest is here. So there's a big circle, like da da da, you know, that kind of thing. And it's just in there. And it totally works. And I love it so much. And like, it's that kind of stuff where you're like, you're masters of your craft. You're like turning like all the rules back against us. You're like using all of these powers just like with perfect, like, I don't know. But I think that's really fucking cool. Like maybe it's happened. I don't want to definitively say it's never happened, but like in a Disney movie, I can't think of a Disney movie where they were like sometimes will make the lines look totally different. I feel like Disney was a lot more controlled in the way, like, the aesthetic is the aesthetic. And that was a big part of their deal. And then in this one, it's like they're doing, I don't know, just wild stuff.
Yeah, that's true. They never really wove it into the story itself. Whereas in this, it's part of the storytelling, the way the line art changes. Whereas Disney, if they're referencing art in some way, it's like stuck in the background. Like there's a Little Mermaid scene where she's doing the like part of your world where she like touches an old painting, and there's a story about that painting, and there's a reason it's there, but it's that the feeling of that painting isn't integrated anymore into the movie. It's just there, it's in its own space. Whereas like Cartoon Saloon takes its references and influences and just puts it in the DNA of its work, and it emerges at appropriate moments where it suits like the story, like through the character design or like their integration with the background or something.
Yeah, that's what it really takes it to like genius tier to me, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I like, that's fucking cool. That's just cool as hell. I don't have anything. It's just so cool. Thanks, guys. You did it.
Yeah, and it's so great to have watched these all in a row because you really do see them grow confidently. I mean, at the end of the day, like that's what you want to see. You want to see like confidence through art. Because that's like, it inspires you to kind of like take a similar path with whatever like things you want to say with your work. But watching them kind of like break into this scene with their Book of Kells and trying out these little experiments and figuring out ways to like communicate and like get you to empathize with characters with like stained glass style imagery, and then kind of building that and being confident enough where you're going to like take in other influences and try new things. Like this movie doesn't feel derivative visually of like Secret of Kells or Breadwinner or Song of the Sea. Like it's kind of dipping into new territory in some way. And I think that's cool that they're still trying stuff. Like it's not like they've locked into a thing or anything.
Yeah, it really just feels like they have a lot more like, we know what we're doing. It never really felt like they didn't know what they were doing exactly, but this does, like you're saying, it has all the confidence of like all those 10 years or however long of experience.
Yeah.
And then now it's like, yeah, I can't wait to see the next thing that they do.
So I was just thinking of it I mean, I don't need to put everything in the context of Disney, but Disney is so organized with how they explain.
But we're going to.
How they explain their process. Like you have your 12 principles of animation that they have, like we've talked a little in the past about like squash and stretch. And then there's like other aspects like anticipation or like solid drawing, like some of these rules to guide your visual storytelling. And I was just thinking like, it's just interesting the way Cartoon Saloon probably also is familiar with this list, but picks and chooses which ones are crucial to it. Like to me, they approach appeal in a very different way than Disney does. Like their characters don't have those little gestures and secondary motion that Disney characters have. They don't have like that extra Disney spark. They have like their own thing going that's just connects in a very different way. And I think when we were watching Secret of Kells, I was still trying to like put my finger on what that was. Like I was like, I'm not getting into this in like an emotional level. I'm getting into it on like an art emotion level, but not like a human emotion level. And I think it maybe does come down to their approach to appeal. And the character Meb is getting, to me, a little more into the Disney realm. Like I really like her, and she kind of crackles with some of that Disney energy in a way I don't think any of their characters really have to this point for me. Like she seems like kind of a next level character design.
Like I don't want to get too much into it now, but I could, because I loved her. Like I remember sitting, she doesn't show up until like maybe 20 minutes or so into this movie.
Yeah.
And I was enjoying it for sure. And I was taking it all in. I'm like watching it and like not really knowing what to expect. And I hadn't watched The Breadwinner before. So my last reference was like Song of the Sea. So I'm like, where are they going? What have they learned? Da, 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 da. And then Maeve shows up and I was like, I love her.
Yeah.
She's amazing. And then like their whole friendship is like really cute and compelling to me. And exactly, this is why like in the first couple episodes we recorded, I was like, I can't wait for Ira to get to Wolfwalkers, because like it really, like it basically gets to a lot of the stuff that you were like, I want more from this, or like whatever. And I was like, Wolfwalkers, they have that. They put that in there and it's there. But that's not to say I don't like Robin, but like I don't find her as relatable to me personally. And then like Maeve, I was like, yes, like this is, I would have fucking been obsessed with her if I had seen this movie as a kid. That would have been like a very iconic for me. And she's just like funny and weird and like loud in a way that was very appealing. And I was like, surprising. I get, well, you have all of this, you know, rigidity in the first, like the start of the movie, because of like, you're in this oppressive environment and you're very uncertain and all of this stuff. And, you know, people in the town are hostile to you. And then like we get out of there and we go into the woods and we meet her. And I was like, she's great. Like the movie immediately came to life for me after that.
Yeah.
And she's definitely like my favorite part, I think, of it. Oh, she's cool. We could hang.
Yeah, she's the warm like core of this movie to me. Like everybody should aspire to be like more like her, is kind of what the movie is.
I agree.
Saying. And like they give her the visual appeal to like draw you to her, because she's kind of like the muse for Robin. She's like the best friend. She's also like her future.
I'd like to talk about Wolf Vision, please, before we move on.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's very good. And what's really cool is, and I'm not biased in any way, it's really fucking cool because they used VR to build the environment. So we've talked before about how Cartoon Saloon doesn't really do a lot of, I was going to say 3D, but like obviously not 3D, but perspective, like really advanced perspective stuff. Everything is kind of couched in terms of these 2D environments. And anytime they do have a hint of perspective, it's pretty fast, or it still has a lot of this like almost like multiplane language. But Wolf Vision is like a true 3D, like real perspective. And they basically built these environments in VR and then did, you know, the camera movements through these like fully realized 3D spaces and then traced over them to give them this really amazing, like pencil texture-y look. And it's basically perfect. And there's even points where, like one of my favorite scenes in this movie is when Robin is a wolf now. Spoiler, she has wolf walked and she's in the woods, and Maeve is also a wolf, and she's like, being a wolf slaps. Like, it's really awesome. Like, let me tell you about how this works. And then, you know, she talks about like how you can navigate the world with all these like wolf senses that you have. And there's this brief section. It's like two quick shots where you're seeing the wolf vision, and it's like pencil drawings of like a rabbit running, and it's basically perfect. I just like shot straight through the roof when I saw that part. I was like, this is the greatest shit you've ever made. I love it so much. It was just like, yes, this is awesome. Like, it's another point where it like, of course you did this in animation. You wouldn't be able to do the same thing. It just works so perfectly. It's like a beautiful visual language conveying this cool concept, and it looks awesome, and it's great.
Yeah, it's just like the texture of the line, the way it's kind of charcoaly or something, even like it kind of radiates with that like charcoal chalky energy. And I mean, my breath was taken away because I don't think I'd ever felt that point of view in a story before. And I think this movie is really a lot about point of view. Like, that's clearly, this is a fun like technique to try, and it's a great way to convey like a wolf vision, and the way it's cool to like see predator vision and like, you know, all these like, let's see it from the creature point of view. But it's also like thematically relevant to just like what's going on with these young characters. The view is great. And also like when they're tracking scents, like the way the line, like they kind of follow this like stretchy ribbon into the scene. It's just, I think it's so captivating, partly like you were saying, because we haven't really seen them deal with depth in this way, but they pull it off so well. You're like, oh, like, can we do more of this? Can we like get this third plane of existence like in more of your storytelling?
Well, and it really is perfect because like that's the whole point of these wolf vision sequences is like your senses are expanded beyond, you know, what you ever conceived that they were before. And it's just, again, genius here for a movie to be like, and now you get to see what that looks like. Like in most movies where something like that happens, yes, you get the whole sequence where they're running joyously through the woods or whatever, but you don't get to be in their perspective. Mm-hmm. And there's so many perspective shots using this wolf vision thing. And it's like, that's very intimate. It's very cool that they're like, you know, your whole world has changed. We've opened up this whole new thing. Like you're learning more about like your reality than you ever knew before. And like you as the audience actually get to participate and be in it. It's not like we're just showing you the characters experiencing that thing. Like you get to do it in this whole new way that deviates from the rest of the aesthetic of the movie.
Wow. Oh, I was totally just going to go there too. Like as you were saying all of that, I was also realizing, oh, they are putting us in the movie for exactly the reason you said. And also I think it's just a way for them to do a new approach to investing in this story. Whereas like in the Disney side, investment is given to the viewer by like showing how the character engages. And like, if this was the Disney version, you might see the character take this like massive breath or like their face kind of open as they like engage with this new point of view. And that would be like mastery in its own way. But instead, we're just like put right into the point of view, which is like just a whole nother approach to it that probably not a lot of animators or studios or directors or whatever really think to do, because there's such a tried and true and successful approach of like looking at a character and then taking it away from how they're engaging with their world. So it's cool. And I guess it's like a little video gamey too. Like it's like all these mediums are kind of like blending together. It's like familiar to an audience to like see this point of view. It's not that jarring or anything.
Well, that was our little gushing about Wolf Vision corner.
Yeah.
We'll probably come up again. We'll probably talk
at least
more
twice,
about
I think. All right. Should we hop into the movie itself? What do you think?
I think so. I think we've done it.
I thought you were going to have a wolf joke.
No, it didn't come to me in time. Don't bring it up. Don't shame me. I can't always be quick on my feet like that. As you mentioned before, the year is 1650. We are in Ireland. We are in Kilkenny, Ireland. And there's a little settlement here. And the townspeople, they are under the authoritarian protection of the Lord Protector, Oliver Cromwell, no less, who is not chill and has decreed that they need to get rid of all the wolves in the forest so they can clear all the trees, so they can work the land. Tale as old as time. Don't like it. Not a fan. And so we meet our protagonist, who is Robin. She's a young girl, preteen age, maybe. I'm not sure that it's definitive at any point. A young girl, and she lives in the town with her father, Bill Goodfellow. He's an English hunter, and his English daughter living here together under the jurisdiction of the Lord Protector. And he is basically Mr. Go out and kill the wolves man on the orders of the Lord Protector. And Robin's very into that. She takes after her old man in a lot of ways. She's like, she's in her hunting gear. She's ready to go. You know, meanwhile, Dad's like, hey, you need to stay inside and do lady stuff. Like, you're not supposed to be out there. It's dangerous. Like, don't leave the city. Well, we know how that goes in movies like this. Robin ventures outside because she wants to be with her dad. She wants to hunt the wolves too. And this kicks off this whole exciting adventure for her. She, through some various shenanigans, she gets caught up exactly in the place she doesn't want to be. She runs into our favorite character, Maeve, who is a young girl of the same ambiguous kind of youngish, like maybe preteen or like early teen age, I would say. Probably younger. I don't know. They feel a little self-sufficient to me as characters. And Maeve kind of teaches Robin to chill out a little bit. They sort of bond over their commonalities. You know, they're young. They both want to sort of be free, and they both want to be able to kind of run around and do their own thing. And Robin goes back home with this new knowledge, and she's excited to tell her dad, like, hey, I have big news. I have a way that we can just get rid of all the wolves without having to kill any of them even. And the dad doesn't want to hear this. He actually gets furious, locks things down. Robin ends up, being thrown to the scullery, essentially, where she needs to, you have a job, like you need to be in here working in the kitchen. And in doing so, she finds this terrible secret. The Lord Protector's, I guess it's his terrible secret. He seems kind of proud of it. Maeve, the character that she meets in the forest earlier, is a titular Wolfwalker. So she has this power where when she's awake and just out in the world, she's like a human girl. But when she's asleep, she transforms into a wolf. And it's kind of in a way where her body stays behind, and then her wolf self is projected kind of out into the world, and she can, roam far from her body, and, she returns to her body to kind of like wake up again and be a human again. This power is transferred by the power of the bite, as one might expect. It's a werewolf kind of a situation happening here. And Maeve bit Robin inadvertently in an act of friendship. It was kind of an accident. And so Robin also has this Wolfwalker capability. This leads her to kind of discover that Maeve's mom, who has been mysteriously missing this entire time, has actually been captured by the Lord Protector. And she sort of telepathically communicates to Robin that she needs to leave. Like, you need to take Maeve, you need to take all the wolves in the forest, and like, you need to go because this guy's going to kill you, essentially. And Robin and Maeve, with a little bit of friendship, what is the word I'm looking for? Like tumultuousness? It's not an easy path, but after a little bit of squabbling and an issue, they come together to essentially rescue Maeve's mom and try to save the wolves. And basically the story culminates with the wolves being able to escape. Not only do they all escape safely back into the woods, but they leave these woods behind, and they move on to what is implied to be sort of an untouched paradise where they'll all be safe. And Maeve is there, the mom is there, and Robin is there as a Wolfwalker, and also the dad, who I'm sure we'll get into his journey, ends the movie also being a Wolfwalker, which is very delightful to me. So we get a happy family kind of ending here. And that is, in a nutshell, Wolfwalkers. It's a rich tapestry, a lot of untapped content for us to get into.
Well, something that's unsaid in this movie is just the feel of this world is so, I don't know. It's got like this approach to realism we haven't really seen them do yet. Like the way they use light in this is a lot more realistic than some of the other films. Especially once we enter into the woods, which is like kind of the true real world, as Cartoon Saloon would always have us believe. And the town is more like the facade of like organization in a system. But I just got to say right off the bat, just like the feeling of the background art in this movie, this is like another tragedy of like, goddamn, I just want to be in a theater watching this for an afternoon.
I was very devastated to not be able to see this one in a theater.
Yeah. But, the two distinct settings really work super well for me in this. They're so good at doing small stories. Like they really haven't stretched their wings yet for doing 4 movies. We're always kind of centered around one basic city or like single location, and then spreading out from that into a more natural environment. It's always kind of like the same. They're like the settings are always kind of mapped in a similar way with Cartoon Saloon movies.
Yeah, it is interesting that it parallels in that way. Like, this did remind me a lot of Secret of Kells. Like,
Yeah.
Secret of Kells had this circular sort of, the abbey structure. It's like perfectly round, and then it was surrounded by forests. And this one, it's like a big rectangle. Like, it's this huge, just like brick on the landscape, kind of. But it's the same, it's basically the same feel. And it just really does feel like it's the same setting, but shifted slightly. And then Song of the Sea is a little bit like that. It's a little more unique, but like even the lighthouse sort of parallels the tower from Kells.
Yeah, in a way, to me, watching this, I was knowing that this is Tomm more distinctly, and Nora Toomey is but a voice actor and producer in this. Like, she's the voice of the housemaid who has like 3 or 4 lines. But just coming from that movie to this, you really start to lock in with how Tomm Moore tells a story. And to me, a little of this is like, oh, now I can do some of the things I wanted to do in Secret of Kells, but do them like for real. Like, I feel like we get little moments like when Meb looks through the shrubs for the first time. We like see her eyes. Like, there's a couple moments early on where she's like kind of cloaked in like the tangles of the natural world. And that is very Secret of Kells to me, in the way that's how we meet.
Oh, Aisling.
Yeah, Aisling. That's how we meet Aisling, is she's kind of just emerging from the greenery.
Yeah, even with the design of the wolves, I thought about that. With the way that Aisling as a wolf in Kells is very, very stylized. And the wolves in this are too, and they don't look the same really at all. They're not stylized in the same way. But it's just like the way that they use the language of the wolves. It feels like this natural evolution of things that they were playing with when they were doing Kells and like doing Aisling as a character. Mm-hmm. Like the way that the wolves, their expressions change totally, completely. Like their faces will change, how the faces are designed based on the context, when they're sort of like being summoned by the Wolfwalker, characters, they get like this blankness to them that's very reminiscent to me of Aisling, but it's not similar. But it's just cool because it is like, Kells really just feels like a pitch for this movie almost. I mean, it's a beautiful movie in its own right, for sure. But like they're like teeing up a lot of the stuff that they do later.
Yeah, totally. In hindsight, this one feels like more of a cohesive vision. Like if you kind of go through, like say you took like screen caps of this whole film and just kind of swipe through it, it flows in a more unified way than I think Secret of Kells would. The voice is like a lot more consistent with this film. Yeah,
well, like I don't know exactly where we should begin, but I did want to talk about just basically the story structure. So that's a great jumping off point for that, because Kells, which we talked about, when we watched that movie, the story was probably the weakest part of it for a couple reasons. And it just kind of like, it doesn't feel like cylinders like firing, trying to like get to this conclusion. It felt a lot more like the journey is the destination type of a movie. I think you described it as like an ASMR movie.
Yeah.
And like all of that, I think, rings true. And then this one feels really different to me. And we saw a little bit of that in Song of the Sea, where it felt a little bit more like a traditional narrative. And then in hindsight, like the Breadwinner, it definitely has more of a story structure that we are all familiar with, like audiences are familiar with. And then this one, I feel like is just like, it kind of nails it. Like this is a movie that I feel like you could show to any kid and like, you're not going to lose them. There's a lot for a kid to get out of this movie and really enjoy and be able to just like easily follow along and be invested. Mm-hmm. You have the villain who like, it's a pretty classic villain, actually. Maybe the first one that they've had so far. Thoughts?
Yeah, totally. He kind of is the antagonist of the themes of the film, in that, the way Disney's sort of like solidified over the course of, their like refining of their style too, right? Where he kind of we get the main characters, right? We get Robin, we get her father, we understand their relationship, we understand the town and the threat or seeming threat of the woods. Like we get the illusions that Robin has kind of like baked into her perspective. It's all set up. And then we see the character who's in control of that, which is like obviously our villain. And that's when the Lord Protector comes in about, you know, I don't know, maybe he's like 15 minutes into the movie to just be like, all the problems you've just seen on screen are the result of me and my like Christian propaganda.
I am the bad guy.
Yeah, just in case you were wondering. And he has nothing more to him, right? He's not even charming in any way. And that's, you know, going back to that idea of the way Cartoon Saloon deals with appeal. There is, even though we're so graphical with their work, and there is like that distance emotionally that I keep like coming back to, there's also like this sad realism that I think we like touch on and with each of these movies at some point, and the way the characters aren't given like that extra flair just to be like, hey, don't worry, you can still like the villain. They're good at jokes, or like they have a good song. This villain is just bad. And there could have been somebody just like this. Like it's more trying to communicate there were people like this in history and here's what they did. You know, there is sort of that like, let's teach, or let's kind of like convey this theme. It may be the cost of like the likability of certain characters in their story. And I think that's like commendable. You know, it kind of opens them up to like different styles of story than like Disney would ever address, or, you know, most mainstream studios.
I was going to say, and I don't feel 100% confident in this reference just because it's been a long time since I've properly seen it, but he reminds me of the guy from Pocahontas, like Disney's Pocahontas.
Oh yeah.
There's I don't remember his name, but you know, the big guy in the purple suit, and he's like the Jamestown guy. And they have the same, they are drawing from the same aesthetic with these characters. Yeah. He's like, I am an Englishman or whatever, and I'm very like, you know, he's got like the nose with like the wart and stuff like that. But it is like, yeah, like the Disney tendency was like, I don't know, he's probably like kind of funny. And like in reality, these were terrible people,
right?
Like visited horrors upon the land, that kind of thing. And yeah, I'd like to see more of that. And it's weird to see the aesthetic of Oliver Cromwell in this movie. And like, I don't even know how to describe it exactly, but his aesthetic is something that I've seen in like a familiar positive context so many times. And so to have that represented in this clearly negative way was very refreshing and kind of cool just from an aesthetic standpoint, even because there's so much like whitewashing and like historical figures. And so you really see a lot of these people and like their portraits that were painted, you know, whenever they were alive, and they're very like authoritative and like regal and like all of this bullshit. And to kind of just be like showing us these people from the perspective of people who knew that they sucked was kind of nice.
Yeah, it's so like the Lord Protector's kind of built, you know, he's colonized this small Irish town, and then within that we get Robin and her dad Bill. And to me, Bill is a bit of a shadow of the father from Song of the Sea. He's kind of got the same hangups. Like he's got a wife who he's lost in some mysterious backstory I don't believe he really has a line that addresses it other than I told your mother I would keep you safe, which is kind of like the go-to line just to like remind us that there was a mother and she's gone now.
Yeah.
So therefore I will. But of course you're going to take care of your daughter. I don't know why you needed to say that.
You'd be surprised.
Okay, fair point. But he's got the same vibe of that dad. He's very tall. He's kind of hunched. He's burdened by his work. Like in this case, he's not a lighthouse keeper. He's a hunter. And that sort of pulls at his morality in different ways because he's really good at it. But he's like, in this case, called upon something that seems so clear, a task for him to like hunt this pack of wolves. But of course, there's complexities once his daughter becomes like part of that pack. And I feel like the the Song of the Sea kind of sets up that dad in a similar way. It's like, well, you thought you were just sort of going through your routine, Dad, and that things were tough and your kids were on the track, and then suddenly, like, fantasy is real. Like, how do you deal with that, Dad? Like, these dads are both thrown into these situations. It's tough for them.
Well, that's really interesting, too, because when you said that it reminded you of the dad from Song of the Sea, I, like, really thought you were about to say from Secret of Kells, who I guess is an uncle.
Yeah.
But I hadn't really thought about it, but, like, that, he reminds me of him, too. And now I'm seeing this thread through all of their movies about this, like, father figure who is just totally misguided. It's 3 movies, like 3 for 3. Because the Breadwinner, I feel like, is its own thing.
Definitely, yeah.
But for these movies, like, they all have this flavor of, like, dad who is in charge, like the adult, and, like, wants the best for you, but is totally going about it in the wrong way.
So when we were talking about, like, Pixar, and we talk about the voice of the director in those movies, I feel like with Pete Docter, we're seeing something into the way he sees the world and the way he kind of constructs his stories. With Tomm Moore, do you feel that this is a dad type that he is drawing from in real life? Or is he, like, looking at these archetypes that suit the story he's trying to tell? Do you see the difference? Like, do you feel like you're seeing a Tomm Moore in these characters? Like, are they all part of the Tomm Moore puzzle, or are they just pieces of the story he's collaborating on?
So it's funny that you asked me that, because I was going to compare it to Wes Anderson's obvious and, like, naked fixation on, like, bad dads. And, like, so much of his movies have, like, I have issues with my father. You're just screaming it. But I don't really, it's totally possible, I guess, that that's what's going on here too, but I don't think it is. Like, I don't read it at first blush as, like, oh, Tomm Moore must, like, have a bad relationship with his dad. Totally possible. I don't know. But I like that you asked that, because to me it feels like, this feels like a bigger topic than I'm, like, I'm getting into it, you know, it just feels like a lot, like it's a lot. But, like, so Cromwell is in this movie, and he is, like, very nakedly, like, the force of evil in the world. Like, it's because of people like him in the context of this film, and probably historically. Honestly, I don't know that much about him. I probably should have done that research, and I will now. But he's the bad guy. Like, he's the reason that Earth is not great.
Yeah.
People like him. And people like the dad are the complicated reality of the real reason that the Cromwells of the world can get away with what they're doing is because a bunch of us are too afraid to do anything about it. I think that's putting a lot of pressure on, like, the individual person. The world is extremely complicated. I understand that. We're talking about a cartoon movie.
Right.
But I'm, like, he's kind of that archetype of, like, I'm a good guy. I'm just trying to do my best. I'm just, like, taking care of stuff. And, like, inadvertently, you cause other people a great amount of pain. Like, you might have the best intentions of, like, keeping your daughter safe and, like, protecting your family, but you're actually making her miserable and ruining her life, kind of.
Totally. Yeah.
And then that's the conflict that comes out of this. And, like, I see that parallel in the other movies. It's like the dad, I think it's more of, like, this kind of authority figure that is not overtly evil, but that just perpetuates the bad thing. And, like, those are the type of people that really need to figure their shit out and, like, stop being that way and, like, just get on the side of right, for God's sake, please. I don't know. I mean, none of us is perfect, obviously, but I think it does have more to do with targeting a type of person rather than, like, I'm, like, you know, maybe I have these issues with my dad or something, and I'm, like, litigating that on screen.
On top of that, like, I agree totally. Like, that's kind of what I was getting at, is I'm trying to understand his entry point to these stories and his motivations, because they are just a little alien to me. like this isn't how I would tell this story if I was presented it. And I think part of it is maybe he's trying to be a little more true than, like, let's say I would be, and maybe a lot of people would be, to the period. Like Robin, her life would have been fucked if she stayed there. I mean, you get a tiny glimpse of it. It's like the only option for a woman is to clean. That's it. Like there's literally nothing else you can do. Good. You figured out the crossbow. That's your, here's the end of your childhood. Like we take it away and now you're scrubbing floors and you're like dusting, you know, and you're carrying buckets of water and that's it. And there's even like little moments where the housemaid is like symmetrically on the other side of the screen as Robin. And you just kind of like get a glimpse of what her future is if she doesn't rebel or do something. And then the only option is to leave. Like, it's not like there's a better place for her in this system. It's not like in Beauty and Beast where the town wakes up and now Belle is like part of everybody's world and everybody's on the same playing field. Like in Robin's world, in this like medieval land, there is no better place for her. And like you see that. And if you're a little kid, I don't know if you're going to pick that up, but as an adult watching this, there's all these visual cues that are like, this world sucks for Robin. She needs to get out of it. And that's just like, I don't know, that's some heavy stuff that they're really trying to work in. And I think it's like part of his agenda of like, here's really what things were like then. He just really seems to want to communicate that. And maybe that resonates more is in Ireland. Like maybe these dad figures are just, you know, they have the weight of masculinity through Irish history that's like burdening them down. And maybe he's seeing that on like his father or other men that he spends time with. It could be that too, you know, like.
That is really interesting to me though, because I feel like that's an everywhere thing. Like I feel like I have seen that person.
Yeah, totally.
So many times. I feel like that's a big problem in America, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about dads, but like just people that don't want to see the bad stuff because they don't have to. And we're all just like doing our best, like to get us by. So like, why rock the boat? Not that it's hard to totally blame him too, because like the dad in this movie is terrified for their lives and he should be. So that's like another element to it. But that's like the unfortunate reality to me of like, this is the kind of the world we live in, honestly. That's like usually the choice between good and evil that a lot of people are making. If you get that far, is like a lot of people end up choosing the shitty thing because you have to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So I don't know that, like, it felt very universal to me.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. It's just interesting the way they portray it and the way, you know, like maybe American films kind of, at least like kids entertainment might deal with it in a different way or like stray away from trying to, you know, show these types of men. I don't know what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, I like that. I'm keeping it going.
Okay, fine. Let's go.
Well, because I like the dad character. I like the way that he's handled a lot. He just feels a little more complex to me. And maybe that's sort of like another thing that you're getting at right now is like, the character relationships don't tend to be that complex. There's not really that many Disney movies I can think of that meaningfully have the child character confronting the parent and being like, you're being an idiot. Like, you are just wrong. Like, please stop. It definitely happens. Mm-hmm. But it's not the same to me. And like, they have this personal relationship. But what I find extra interesting is that I sort of feel like the dad was not going to figure it out until he got his ass bit and had to be a wolf. And I was like, honestly, this is a really bold statement. And it's almost kind of scary to me because like, is the implication, and I say scary because I'm afraid that this is true, is that like people will never stop doing shitty stuff until they have to experience what it's like to actually be on the other end of that for real. And like he shot the mom. So, you know, I skimmed over a lot of these details in the recap, but just like really quickly, when they bust out the mom, she's a wolf. So she's like caged by the Lord Protector, and, you know, Robin frees her out of the cage and like they escape in the city. But the dad was like, I'm going to kill this wolf who like, I have to do it. I've been ordered to do it by the Lord Protector. And Robin's like, hey, you're an idiot. Like, no, you can't do that. Like, she's for like my friend's mom, first of all, and like they're people and like stop doing these evil things. And she has to flee for her life to do it. And then when the dad catches up to them outside the city, he shoots her. He just shoots her. And honestly, I was like, no, like I had an emotional experience with that because I was like,
yeah,
son of a bitch. Like I am attached to all of these characters. Like I don't want her to die. And it's absolutely, that's like beyond the pale that like you literally shot her. Like, did you not get the fucking message? And he'd had plenty of times to figure it out, like plenty of chances to figure it out at this point. And it's not until his daughter is like in actual extreme physical danger and he is a wolf person does he finally figure out like, you need to get right. Like you need to get on the side of goodness and stop actively perpetuating evil, you knucklehead. It's just raising a lot of questions that Disney movies, for example, don't tend to raise. It's just like, I want to be the king because I'm the uncle and my brother lion was the king first. Like, I guess I'll murder somebody. This is basically Shakespeare. And like, that's Disney a lot of the time. It's not like richly emotionally complex.
Yeah, I like that we're just sort of, we're kind of following the journey of the men through this story, and then we'll cycle back and like tell the other stories that happen. But when we got to this last act with focusing specifically on the dad and the Lord Protector, I really liked the way everything came together in the way it pushed the tension to like the last possible moments with both these characters. Cause like the way you told the dad's story, I was getting the thrill of watching it because I really wasn't sure what was going to happen. And I love that he doesn't have an earlier turn. So he's an ally in the third act. He really kind of isn't. It's still just the kids. And I also love the death of the Lord Protector. And in the last scene, of course, we're like at the edge of a cliff as we should be in the final scenes, right? It's like this beautiful, like kind of circular waterfall, like two-tiered waterfall thing. That's like this great design. And the Lord Protector is facing off with the father, who is now a Wolfwalker.
Papa Wolf. He looks really cool, by the way. His design's super badass.
Yeah, he looks great. Like he's kind of like lovable, but also tough. Like you're like that. He would protect me. He's a good dad.
Yeah, it's like, oh, like my dad's gonna really like beat you up, actually.
Yeah, and he bites him, right? And the Lord Protector has this armor on, and there's like just this great tense close up of like Bill Goodfellow's teeth like sinking into the armor, and this sort of like illuminated line work that evokes the Wolfwalker like perspective. It's like if you become a Wolfwalker, you'll see the spirit of the forest through like this gilded line work, and it's starting to emerge, and the Lord Protector's vision starts to shift, and it begins to illuminate around him. And instead of seeing the light and understanding, like, I don't know, the pagan world or whatever, whatever the other side of his Christian ideals is, he fucking unbuckles his armor and just falls to his death. I think that's great because usually the villain dies as like a buffoon, or they're just so caught up in their own power. It's like, I'm finally the genie. I'm just going to undo myself by being like crazy. Like he makes a choice. Like the Lord Protector says, I don't want to see this. And he just kills himself, basically. He ends his own life.
Which is incredibly fitting.
Yeah, I just found that a great villain ending because, I don't know, there's just, it really resolves that character in a way that makes him a lot richer than maybe what we're introduced to him as. It's like, wow, you really were going to go all the way, you were really committed to your ideals. And in a way that's like, oh, wow, that's commendable to some degree, right? You're like, you suck, but like you really stood by what you believed.
I love that for you.
Yeah, good for you. Fall on those spikes. Have fun in the afterlife. But yeah, so, the men in this movie, I think, have like richer journeys than they're just more emotional too, right? It's like in Secret of Kells, the guys, the older men don't really have like this complete journey. They age, but we don't really like, actually that's not true. The uncle in Book of Kells kind of has a nice little moment when he finally gets the book. So I'll take that back. But
yeah, like I like to see, this is going to sound weird, but like the dad experiences several moments of abject shame. And I think that's good. Like at the end of this movie, you know, after the villain has fallen and all of this, and they save the mom because she was mortally wounded. She didn't actually die. And Robin and Maeve like use Wolfwalker magic to heal her. And the dad comes and he sees all this happening and like, he's obviously like happy to, you know, he participates in the healing process too, because they need like all the power of like this whole wolf pack. But then he tries to leave and it's like he's so embarrassed because he was basically a complete failure. And they're like, no, like you're part of this family, you know, you should stay. But it's like, that's a nice moment. And I like that you see that. I'm not like, yes, like shame the dad. It's not that, but that it shows that he really did finally get it. I think like he has a whole emotional kind of journey. So you get to see his perspective early on, you know, you get to see him go through that journey and you get to see him confront the reality that he's really just terrified. And then the whole process of like getting to enact this, you know, third act, you know, rescue, and he's involved with that. Mm-hmm. And then finally sort of like the redemptive like ending where they all end up together. But it's like a nice full journey. Like it feels very rich.
Yeah. And I think it's challenging too to give an adult that big of a presence in a kid's movie. That's why like a lot of these stories are like orphan children or the kids get away and they go on their own adventure. The dad's around for not a whole lot of this, but enough, like you're saying, that we get a real sense of him. He isn't just on the two ends of the story. Like he's throughout and he changes along with it. Like he's experiencing most of the moments, but just at different beats than that his daughter is.
Yeah, and just I think this will be a quick aside, but springboarding off what you're saying, because it's sort of the opposite, is that the mom character, I think her name's Moll, like Moll. But I like her so much. I love her design. She's just like this giant red-haired woman, and she seems awesome. And like she's a huge wolf when she's a wolf, and that's very cool. And but you don't get to see that much of her in this movie. And I think I wanted to. And you know, obviously in hindsight, I'm like, how would they have done this? Like there's literally no time. Yeah. She's just not in it that much. But she's also voiced by Maria Doyle Kennedy, who I really like. The first time I ever saw her in something was she was Catherine of Aragon in The Tudors, like 1,000 years ago. And I just really responded to her performance in that movie for some reason. I always liked her as Catherine of Aragon. And she was in Downton Abbey and some other stuff. But she's really good in this. And she also sings the end credits song, which I didn't know. Apparently, she is a singer. That's like a whole aspect of her career that I just wasn't aware of. But that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I think she did a good job.
Yeah, she's more like just the design of the character. She looks like an ancient idol, like the way she's posed.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like she's like carved from stone and you could like pick her up and move her around or like discover her in that position, you know, like 10,000 years later or something, which is probably like intentional. She's just like the embodiment of the Wolfwalker spirit.
Yeah, Mama Wolf.
Yeah.
Of course.
So to cycle back to the kids, something that's new to Cartoon Saloon in this for me is the way they use like the kids' behavior and motion and the way they stage like little moments of interaction is really like next level. Like the way Robin has all these cute little moments with her crossbow, like she's extremely competent with it. And they kind of use that to make these charming, like secondary actions. Like she's in their little home and she's imagining she's hunting a wolf and like fires it at the sign on the back of the door and it sticks and she goes to get it, but she can't get it out. And then her dad opens the door and she's like closed behind it. Totally unnecessary, but extremely charming. And I just love the way they break down that, you know, to me, the woodblock print, that style really evokes like just this heavy darkness. Like there's so many black, thick lines in this city, especially when she goes into like her cleaning phase. Like there's just like these heavy black frames everywhere. It's very clever the way they use like cartoon appeal and like charming just animation gimmicks to lighten the mood in these like kind of darker scenarios, especially in the first act of this before we're like really out in the in the woods and having a great time.
Yeah, I don't want to, this isn't intended to be a subject change, but tonally, like the opening of this movie, which deviates from the aforementioned, like the story in a story sort of sequences that like Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea had, where, you know, it always starts with this like, once upon a time there was a thing, and like this different kind of aesthetic. It doesn't have that, but it does have like this, a sequence of like idyllic forest imagery, and then it follows up with all of those same locations like ravaged and devastated.
Yeah.
So there's like a deer in the woods, and then there's like a bird sitting in like a pond in the woods, and then like the next shot, like all the trees have been cut down. And like the music is really somber, and I was like, oh God, like I actually hate this. And like I feel bad feelings from it.
I know, I feel bad too. Because if you think about it that way, yeah, sure, the family heads off in their nice little cart, which is like full of like beautiful foliage and like flowers. It's like this giant garden that they're traveling with. But that shitty town still exists.
Yeah.
Like those people are all still back there. The forest is raised. The like the, you know, they have no sewer system probably. Like that story is still there. You're like, oh yeah. They don't let you think about that though.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised.
Right?
Like, if we want to skip to the ending a little bit, yeah, they all survive and the wolves are fine, but they leave. They don't, you know, come to an understanding with the townspeople or like figure out some kind of like a treaty. They just leave. And so the implication is that all the trees do get cut down. I guess you could theorize that because like Oliver Cromwell died, that's not what happens, but I don't. It was just something that was in the back of my mind that was like, you had to leave. Like, you could not save your home. And then, you know, how much longer will you have this place to live in? And it's one thing that I really feel like I connect with, like, these movies and, like, with Tomm more specifically, because I have a tremendous amount of angst because of, like, climate change and, like, forest destruction and all of this stuff. And, like, I don't know. We don't have a lot of natural spaces left on this planet, honestly, especially compared to then. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I get very overwhelmed personally thinking about people in like the medieval times had so much world left and how little we have of it even now. Like, not that much longer after, like hundreds of years. Yeah. But like, holy shit, you know? And so I like stories like this, but they also always kind of make me sad on some level, because there's only so many times you can have this optimistic ending. I don't know, you know, what movies are we going to have like 100 years from now? Like, how much forest are we going to have left then? It's just like,
yeah, it's true. Like because all these movies, they're, you know, the idea of like these fantasy realms are because there are mysteries left, right? If we create the unicorn or the dragon or the werewolf, it's to answer some questions about human behavior or things that are unseen in the world around us. And that's what magic is. And that's what these stories are about. And yeah, when they ride off in that wagon at the end, where are they going? I mean, they're not riding to their doom, but they're just barely escaping the onslaught of like the clearing of land and the answering of questions and like the loss of magic, which I guess is like, you know, one of those artistic pursuits, right? Like art is rooted in examining nature. But if you strip it away, what do we get? We just get like Cyberpunk 2077 over and over again. Like
chaos.
Those type of stories, they don't, I mean, I like those aesthetics to some degree, but they don't evoke interesting questions in my mind. They just kind of like have a mood, like a candy bar more. Whereas like fantasy stories connect you to like human history because they try to like remind you that there were not always answers, that there was just like the pursuit of questions. And if you take that away from people, like where does poetry go? Like where does expression go? Like, you know, it disappears. And that's why the studio is beautiful, right? Because they indulge these questions of nature. Like all of these movies are about what does it mean to be outside the walls of humanity and like experience the light and the color.
Yeah, there's something about these movies. I think, I don't know, that I don't feel this way about like Disney movies. I love aesthetically and for lots of reasons, but I don't feel like I never watched a Pixar movie and was like, oh, these people are me.
Yeah.
Sorry if that's too bold to say, Cartoon Saloon people, if you're listening. But like, I watch a movie like this and I'm like, I could have made this. Again, no, I couldn't have. I'm not encroaching on your territory. I'm sorry. I'm beyond my station. But like this, it resonates with me because
you share a spirit.
Yeah, it's obvious that they care about the same things that I care about and are telling stories that I care about. That it's like reassuring. It's reassuring that there are whole studios of people out there who are like, doing this is bad. We should care about nature. We should care about art, and we should care about people. And we should care about stories and like how the power that they have for people. And that is just like, oh, thank God. Like, oh, okay. You know, like we're still out there. Like we're doing our best. That's not to say I'm like a perfect person, whatever, you know, but it's a kindred spirit thing where like I love Don Bluth's weird movies, but I didn't watch those movies and be like, this guy really cares about the same stuff as me. Like,
yeah,
there's not like that kindred kind of like a deeper sort of connection, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like you can just see there's similar points of reference like emerging, but they're different than I think we were. Yeah, like in the Don Bluth episode, we were talking about certain aesthetic things like the way they use color or lightning or, you know, like certain visual effects, like kind of evoke something that we're like, yes, I'm of the same mind. Like this movie and Cartoon Saloon is just a little different. There's something like more ageless, I think, because they're referencing medieval art so much that it's like, not only are we like, oh, I would make a thing like this if I had the opportunity, but I also like love the weird, interesting, ancient stuff that you do. And it just like makes a bigger picture for every aspect of the conversation, right? Like the artist, the viewer, and like the people influenced that go on to make other art. You know, it is quite magical. And one other while we're talking about like fantasy and stuff, I got to bring up a character we haven't talked about yet. But Merlin the Falcon.
Oh, the Falcon.
a little credit for the birds in this movie because the wolves are getting a lot of our attention. But I love that he's named Merlin, and I actually can't wait to do Sword in the Stone because I love the Once and Future King. And to me, those books kind of touch on the same thing because Merlin takes Arthur into the natural world where he embodies all the animals so he can empathize with his kingdom, because his kingdom is not just like within the walls, right? And I don't know, that to me, I could see Cartoon Saloon like rebooting, you know, like some of those legends or like even the Sword in the Stone stuff. Like it just seems like perfectly aligned. But also I wonder if they would want to do like an English story as much just because they're so conflicted with the relationship with England. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. There's only one way to find out.
Call them?
Yeah, I'll text them right now. They're not responding. Just leave me on red.
A couple little... Since we kind of went through the whole story, I'm kind of jumping back to the beginning a little bit to reinforce some like things I like about the way they tell the story. When Merlin is shot, I hate it when, of course, you know, when animals die in movies, it's awful and like rarely done because it's like so much more traumatic when like a human character dies. But when he gets shot, it really does set up that this world is dangerous and like the dad might die and part of the mom does die. Like there's all these, I mean, things are revived in some way, but I just kind of like that it sets up that Merlin might be dead. I don't think Merlin really is dead, but I like that they set up that people can and animals can really get hurt in this story. So watch out.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, like, I spent most of this movie absolutely positive that something bad was going to happen to one of the characters.
Oh, totally. It feels...
And honestly, like the relief that I felt when it was like game over and all of the players, the major players have survived. I was so relieved, which like... I don't feel that way normally about characters. Like, that's kind of funny, but like... Not that many times in a movie am I like really that invested anymore. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't happen that often. I don't know. Make better characters, y'all. No, but like, and when she shot Merlin, I was like, like, I'm sure, you know, if you have a pet that you love, you probably have the occasional intrusive thought about like, I don't know, stepping on them or something, or like hurting them accidentally. And it like makes me feel ill when I think about it. Like I get so upset about that. I don't like, it's devastating. If I ever did anything to cause the death of like one of my rats, I genuinely don't know how I'd get over it. It would be very traumatic.
Yeah.
And so for her to shoot Merlin accidentally herself, like I felt that physically in my body. And she's so upset. And I'm like, I totally get it. Like, maybe that's just one of those things that in good storytelling, it's like you really want to put the audience in the shoes of the people. Like, and like, that was one way to connect with me. And I guess you too, was just like hurt the pet and have it be her doing it accidentally. I'm like, no, that's one of the worst things that can happen.
I think that's part of their growth as a studio, is finding that exact thing that's going to connect to the most amount of people. Because in Secret of Kells, it's more of like the call of the forest. It's like an abstract idea, and Brendan wanders out to track the call. And you're like, okay, kids are curious. I get it. But this is way more interesting. And I have no question about why she would go into that forest, because it's not like a spirit is calling her. It's not like this like magical fairy thing. It's like she shot her pet and it's out there. It's like, well, yeah, you got to go get it. And it's a lot more grounded of a reason to kind of get her to meet, you know, the forest and the characters within it. They've made a lot of great little moments like that in the story. I kept appreciating just tiny solutions to like kicking in the next stage of the plot, whether it be like the way the villain dies or the way they show their friendship develop as they like ride the wolves. And we cut back and forth between like the perspective. It's like this beautiful, like interesting camera angle, like dance with like the spirit of the forest and these two characters like moving through it. There's just so many like just great director choices in this that seemed like so much more advanced to me than we saw in Song of the Sea.
Yeah.
To me, there's like a lot of next level stuff going on. Whether I think the story is like super interesting as a whole, like I think it's quite simple. Like you could almost predict what's going to happen. Like you could kind of tell this story in a lot of different ways in terms of plot, you know, like the way the beats happen. But the way they tell it is like amazingly masterful. And then the themes they evoke through the telling are like extremely rich, which I think makes it appeal to like all audiences more. Like little kids could watch this and just collect the fun of it.
Yeah.
And still understand it. Whereas like you and I could sit here for hours and just be like, it's beautiful, but sad, but so happy, but devastating. Like, you know, it's like all angles of emotions.
Yeah, like I really had a lot of like an emotional journey watching this movie in a way that just felt very unique. Like it just doesn't happen often enough, you know? Mm-hmm. And I still want to talk about like there's so much aesthetic shit. I don't know.
I know.
This is just a really good movie. But like one thing I forgot earlier in like our aesthetic conversations is that like the forest, there will be like these wide shots of the forest, and the way that the tops of the trees are like rolling and they're kind of red and they're like, they look just like the hair of like Maeve and her mom. And I'm like, shut up. Like that's so fucking good. And then also like the bear traps or like the wolf traps that the dad puts out are all rectangular. And I'm like, they look like the city.
Yes.
Y'all are geniuses. Like what the fuck? And like, it's just these little things. I don't even know how you do this. Like, how did you do it so good? They've always been good at it. That's something we've talked about in the other episodes. Like, they're really good at design. You know, if you have that background in fine art, and art history, and graphic design, and all of this stuff, like, you obviously have a very strong foundation to be working off of. But I'm like, I don't feel this way about Disney movies or Pixar movies. I don't. Visually, they're amazing. They're always, like, executed to a really high level, but the design sensibility is not the same. And I'm a lot more impressed by the visual design of Cartoon Saloon stuff than I am about a lot of Disney and Pixar movies and other movies like that. They don't use like everything about the visuals in Cartoon Saloon. It's any opportunity they have to thematically fold it back in again on something else, they do it to the point that it's like, some of these I'm probably making up. Like some of these are probably not even intentional, but it's like so well done. Honestly, I don't even believe that. I believe all of it is intentional, but like, I just don't even understand it, but it's really great.
Yeah, it just, they must have, I mean, again, like, I'd love to have been in the room where they're communicating these early stages. Like I talked a little bit about the one piece of concept art that thematically connects everything, but on a whole nother level, like you're saying, like the character design is integrated into the backgrounds, the movement through the spaces, like reflects this and ties to this. And like, now we see the inversion of this, like it all unfolds from itself in a way that, yeah, Disney never was that organized. It's like there's background, they look great, and the characters move in those spaces and it looks realistic for the most part. That's their pursuit. But there isn't this subtext of like sacred geometrical forms that in turn like tell you that we're like halfway through the narrative, or like the world is connected to this character in this way, not through just color, but yeah, like you're saying, like shapes and just the fundamental composition of it. It's like there from the early conversations, like the way they were designing all these spaces. It's not like they were just, you know, came together later and it was just happenstance. It's like there's just some architecture at a base level of their storytelling that just makes it extremely satisfying.
Something about it just like tickles that part of my brain, because I find myself, if I'm working on a project, if it doesn't have a really clear visual like lodestone, I don't know, like a North Star, I really struggle. So, because like a lot of the work that I do, and it's like motion graphics, it's kind of graphic design, animated stuff, but sometimes you'll get a project and like, you know, you get reference material, so you sort of know a general look to go for. But like if I can't figure out what's motivating things to happen, I can't figure out how to finish the design. This is something I like really recently learned about myself, that like if you're stuck brainstorming something, this might be why, that you don't have a focal point. But like this one project that I'm working on right now has this aesthetic that's like very like, you see this in a ton of documentaries, and it's like the photo is like in a void and there's like particles, but then there's like text, and like the text is highlighted by like a stroke of like a brush of paint and stuff. And I've been really struggling trying to get it there to like the next level, because like why? Like what is the void? Like where are we? Right? And if it was just like everything is painted on and we're in this like environment where the background is a canvas and like the photos painted on there, and then even, you know, with some dimensionality, so I can start to get there. But if you don't have anything, that's that. And like, I don't think they do it as masterfully, but like, let's say like Pixar, for example, they usually have something like that, where like The Incredibles obviously has such a wonderful unifying aesthetic because they have this whole language to draw from that they can then riff off of. You know, Brad Bird didn't invent mid-century design, but using that as their like their North Star of like, well, what's the vibe we're trying to evoke here? Well, like it's all mid-century, like let's focus on that. And then with Cartoon Saloon, they do it so perfectly. Like that's what makes it so good from an artistic perspective, is like, well, this movie is set in 1650, you know? What were people making at the time? Like, let's look into that, and let's, you know, and then so they use like woodcut as an aesthetic for a lot of the backgrounds in the town and all of this stuff. It doesn't look like straight up woodcut. That's just like a visual language they're using. And then they like plus it, like it's so much more advanced because they're making it with more modern tools. And then they're doing it in this expansive way that nobody in 1650 was envisioning. Right. Nobody had heard of movies back then. So that's, I don't know. I guess I'm just sort of pivoting into like good brainstorming advice. If you're trying to figure out how to figure that stuff out, that's usually what it is. Like you need something to glom onto. If you don't have that, it just won't come, in my experience. And like, sorry, just the capstone, you know, idea to like tie it all back to this is just like, I've been really inspired rewatching these Cartoon Saloon movies and like watching this because of realizing that, and then just like seeing how excellent they do that. I just feel like it's like opened up a lot of like, oh, kind of a thing in my mind of just like, that's why it's so good.
Right. It makes you want to like reverse engineer their process because I think you hit it on the head when you said you can't have your collaborators or especially yourself asking why do something because then the journey is pointless. Like art doesn't have to happen unless there's an answer to why, right? Like you have to resolve that. Otherwise, you're in pursuit of nothing. You're just sort of like,
and that's what you'll get.
Earning a paycheck or just doing some shit and you're directionless, right? But this
the Gamork of art.
Yeah. Right, yeah. And where did that get that poor wolf?
Nowhere good.
And to jump off another point you brought up in that great mission statement about like how to get focused and be motivated on like a creative project, like you were saying, like you're able to jump off like this secure path and like have fun with little things. There's all these great little moments of the girls' budding friendship. Like they're sitting on a tree branch together and Robin takes out a brush and starts combing Meb's hair to just bring a little bit of civility to her. And she takes the leaves away. But in Robin's hair, she has leaves now too. So they're slowly like merging into the same world. You can't make those choices and like these great little character flourishes and these like subtle beats that push the story along in really natural ways, like unspoken ways, without having a common goal of like where this is all heading and how it looks and how it gets there visually, you know? So just like the role leaves play in this movie is part of the story. And it's an extra thing. It's like, man, somebody had to draw all those goddamn leaves and someone had to draw all those extra wolves, but it's all in service of like, you know how good the story is going to be when we like add all these extra elements. It's just only going to further enforce like the themes.
Yeah, I'd be honored to be like wolf animator number 4.
Yeah.
You just need to do the wolves, okay?
I feel silly because I always want to like think I'm seeing the things that aren't on the screen and that's what I'm connecting with. But really, like at the end of the day, I think the wolves are the best part of this. That collective, like the way they kind of like flow like a river when they're in the woods, but then we get close.
Yes, I love how they're like water.
But then when you zoom in, they all have like this chaotic energy within that amassment. Like they're an entity unto themselves. Like it's amazing. I do see a little bit of the beauty of how in 101 Dalmatians, it's just mind blowing how there are so many dogs.
Yeah.
And they're all like playing off each other. Maybe that's kind of like that energy that's coming through and the inspiration here. But the way these wolves move and the space they take up and the way they're kind of symmetrical at times, but then other times they all clearly have like their own thing. None of them really pop out in like a Disney way where there's like a dumb one
has a spot
and a really
on his
smart one.
ear.
Or, you know, they're not like, yeah, they're all kind of like symbolic wolves, but they still do like have a warmthness and they do remind you how outsiders feel about them and how it feels to be part of their pack, you know, like they're very inviting when the time comes. And I think it's just a great way to like help you engage with the story because you're like looking to the wolves for like, can I get close to you yet? Are we ready? Are we like connecting? You know, there's like a magic to how they like give you the perspective of the natural world in this.
Yeah, I love them. I don't like, they're everything you said.
And more.
And more. End of thought. I just like, I don't know that they...
Yeah.
Sometimes they're kind of creepy, I guess, initially, and maybe that's because you're not seeing them from a closer perspective. I just have this vague thought, I guess, about it being an interesting way of showing, like, the experience of... Well, maybe not the experience of being, like, nature or, like, part of nature, but, like, showing that they are sentient things with their own sort of conception of reality that we should like respect. I don't know. It's a weird thing to talk about because there's not a lot to grab onto in terms of like concrete things, but there's something about the way that they have this like trance state in this movie where their eyes are just like flat, like glowing yellow, and they're all sort of like as one. And then like you mentioned, they have these moments where they all kind of break character as a group and they're all like silly and like weird or whatever. And I just love that because like on the one hand, that's like people see them as these scary sort of like faceless things that don't have personality, that don't have any. And then really you see them as wolves see them, I guess, like as you would imagine wolves see each other, where they're all like, we're like silly and we're like people essentially, like we're, you know, where they have expressions, I guess, is what I'm getting at. There's the faceless kind of glowy, like maybe we're snarling and stuff, but we're not like, you know, smiling. Like then there, you know, there are parts in this movie where they're like smiling or they're frowning or whatever.
There's also this, I was, you know, when I was doing a little research into this, there's just kind of like a tragic history of like Ireland and wolves and how they're pretty much eradicated. Like I don't think there are any wolves in modern day Ireland. And they were, I guess, the villains. Like at first, when they first appear in an early scene, I'm like, oh, are we doing the classic, like the wolves are the bad guys thing? And of course, it's like more complicated than that. But according to like some of the history I was glancing over, like wolves really were the villains of these small, like fragile towns as they were trying to expand, whether, you know, depending which side of that you're on, like that can be like a problem, or it could be like, let's leave nature alone. You know, it's like complicated, but it's sad to think that like, oh yeah, this is part of that whole theme of there's pieces of our past that are just lost. And like wolves, like the animal itself is actually like part of that story.
Sad. I have more to say about that, but it'll be completely off topic and not about the movie anymore. So
yeah, now we're just talking about like animals.
It's like that's a big motivating factor in like a lot of the art that I'm doing right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was looking at like the Irish wolfhound, and I believe they're kind of like they were used to protect against wolves. I think that's how they're specifically bred.
Damn, betrayal.
Which is like
betrayal at the highest order.
You know, there's all these like great meaningful themes in here, but I think at the end of the day, like if I was a kid watching this movie, I would just be so happy that it's about young friendships, because honestly, like most cartoons you grow up with are individual journeys, right? Not to get into hero's journey stuff again, but like The Little Mermaid, it's her journey. She's got friends, but some of them are left behind as she enters into this new world. But this is a movie about making a friend and understanding their point of view because you didn't get it at first. And like there was like some heavy friction early on, and this person's so different than you, but like watch as you figure it out. And now you become a little bit of each other as you like grow together. It's like a friendship and fast forward basically. But I just love this movie. Really is, you know, a friendship story. And I feel it kind of, it might be the center of the movie, but the great scene where Robin is learning to be a wolf, and they're both, I think at this point they're both in wolf form, and they're kind of like, we're seeing the wolf vision and we're exploring the forest, and Robin's getting like more confident and they're being like very playful. And I think we get the theme song. What's the name of the song?
I guess like Running with the Wolves.
Something like Running with the Wolves. It's like Running with the Wolves, Wolfwalker edition. It's like, could you throw the word wolf in there again? Maybe. I don't know if we get it.
Well, it's funny because apparently that song already existed, and then they like re-recorded a version for this. So it really is the Wolfwalker version. And I was like, oh.
It's funny.
Yeah, I mean, they're just pre-existing perfect song for this like little interlude, I guess. Mm-hmm. But it was too poppy, so they had to redo some of it.
Yeah, they had to traditionalize it or something. But just a great tale of friendship and a nice little montage of them kind of coming together.
Yeah, speaking of, this is really funny because I feel like you and I have been bringing up the same stuff like right as the other person was about to do it. So I'm like, we're really on the same level right now.
Me too.
I appreciate that. Because I was about to say that too. Like, well, you were like, let's talk about a fun thing, you know, to wrap it up. And I was like, okay, I don't know what he's going to say, but like my backup idea is like we should talk about their friendship because we sort of talked about it, but maybe not enough. And then you went there, which is pretty cool. But yeah, like from the minute they were hanging out together, I mentioned earlier, like when Maeve shows up, I was like, this movie's great. I just love her energy. I think she's really fun. She's really silly and like, everything about her is kind of appealing. She does what she wants. She's not stupid. She's like, I don't know, she's scaring sheep and stuff to be funny. And like, I just appreciate that. And even before Robin gets wolfed, she's bitten, but she hasn't like turned into a wolf yet. And that scene you're talking about where they're sitting on the tree together and she's like brushing her hair.
Yeah.
I was like so warmed by that. Like, it's also kind of rare to see, like, I don't know, this feels like bold to say that it's rare to see good friendships portrayed in film. I don't know that that's fair, but like, I guess I don't see a lot of movies where characters are friends where I feel that the way that I do about it. 'Cause I'm just like, they are genuinely like so sweet and really like each other. Like, I think some of it is how you can tell that Maeve's really excited to have met Robin, even when Robin is gone. And I'm like, that's so cute. Like that feeling you get when you meet somebody and you're like, oh, like we vibe, like we are friends. And I get excited about that, you know, when I meet people that I'm like, we have a lot in common. Like, or like there's just that unspoken thing. And like, we don't even know each other really, but like we get it. Like, we are on the same level to some degree. I totally understand that. And then the whole like, I don't know the like literary term that I'm looking for, but Robin gives Maeve this like flower out of her hair and like puts it in her hair. And then there's a point later when they're fighting, when Maeve thinks that Robin's betrayed her because Robin won't help free her mom out of like fear and concern. And she like crushes the flower in her hands, like it's like you've betrayed me. And I was like,
yeah,
no, I felt that too. Like, that's harsh because they genuinely seem to like each other so much. And when Maeve like goes back and is talking to her mom, who is just like her sleeping body because she's not there, she's like out as a wolf somewhere. And Maeve is still like talking to her about her day, and it's like, I met this friend, like, you know, we had a great time together, whatever. I'm like, that's so cute. Like, everybody should have a friend like that. You know what I mean? Who like feels that way about you. Like,
you know what it's making
really
me think of? Like, it's almost like they, this is the beginning. This is like the true beginning of their childhood because they both had no one. Like, Robin was basically like kind of migrated to Ireland, and she's an outcast because like the town she moved is being colonized and everybody hates her with like fair reason. Like, there's all these like bully kids who don't want to be her friend because she represents like the eradication of their culture, right? Like all the Gaelic stories they have are, you know, Robin's part of what's changing all that. And it's like, that's like a tough burden for a kid to carry. And also she's a girl and her destiny is to work as a maid. And she wants to be a hunter like her dad, but probably secretly knows there's like no future of that. And then on the other hand, in the woods, like Maeve doesn't really have peers or friends. She has like wolves, but they're all like adults. It's not like there's even a kid wolf. And they're kind of, I don't know, like they're not like her subjects. They're just like part of her. Like they're like an element of the natural world she's like harmonious with. So it's not until the two of them meet that they even really get to be kids, which is like, you know, sad to think about. I don't think the movie's necessarily saying that, but as you're like describing their friendship, I'm like, oh my God, what we're seeing is like the beginning of their childhood. And then they ride off and now they're sisters basically. And you just kind of imagine they're going to have like just the best time together, hopefully.
Yeah, it's interesting to me actually because like at the end, the dad and the mom are like riding in the wagon together, and I'm like, wait, do they get together?
It seems to just say that just because you want that ending.
I'm like, is it implied that they're dating now? Like, what's happening here? Which is fine. I don't know.
I think they're just giving it to you. Like you saw the new Little Women, right?
Yeah.
Like the way that movie kind of gives you the endings, and it's like winkingly giving you the endings. It's like, I know this is what you want. I almost feel like this last scene of this movie, it's beautiful, but they're like, oh yeah, also the parents are together and now they're one big family. Even though
like it's one whole family. They've finally been restored.
Yeah, and you're like, what? Fuck it. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I feel good now.
Like the dad could use a win too, honestly, and the mom just seems really cool. Like, you should be so lucky, honestly.
Yeah, who knows what secret powers she has? I mean, she seems like she's like a power beyond like anything we've seen in this movie. There.
Yeah, she could kick your ass. That's for sure.
But yeah, like a great little, I mean, I think the directors know, they're like, everybody loves these characters. Let's just give it to them.
Yeah, happy ending. And we appreciate it. I'll take it in this day and age. That's all for now. So join us next week as we enjoy the great Soviet animation, Nazim Tulyakotsaev's adaptation of Ray Bradbury's short story, There Will Come Soft Rains.
And I think you can just find that on YouTube, so...
There was a link in Wikipedia. If you look up Uzbek films, There Will Come Soft Rains. I found a link. So you may view it online before you join us. There will be a quiz.
Yeah, it's a Wikipedia if you can print out in the show notes. All right, so check out our episode archive where we've got a whole bunch of other cartoons from all over the world, ready for you to enjoy our analyzation of. There's also some facts about Caitlin and I, and all of that stuff is at cartoonfeelings.com. You can tweet at us or join us on Instagram. Both of those things are at Feeling Cartoons.
And if you have thoughts or questions that you'd like to share with us, you can do so by writing us at cartoonfeelingspodcast@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying the podcast, even a little bit, we would be super grateful if you would consider rating us or leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and or sharing us with your animation-inclined friends. That would be super cool.
Yeah, and that's all for now, everyone. We'll see you next time.